Welcome to Gnarly Metal After Hours, a rock and talk show that features conversations with radio announcers, musicians, and fans about radio, rock, and records of the 80s. And it's an extension of my Friday night show, Gnarly Metal, which is primarily a music show. This is a live show that airs one Saturday a month at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. And I'm very pleased today to welcome my guest, Rich, aka Anti-Famouz. So,
How's
Rich,
it going?
It's great. Thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Rich is local to Colorado Springs. As most of you know, our station is here in Colorado Springs, and at gnarly101.com, we work very hard to make sure we are reaching out to our friends in the community and supporting them, and especially our musician friends. Since we're a radio station, that's what we do here, and we believe we do a pretty good job of it. So, Rich, let's start off. Please introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about your musical career for starters.
So I go by Anti-Famouz. That's Anti-Famouz with a Z. And it's not just because it sounds cool. It's because I don't do this for the fame. I do it because I love writing music. I love working on music. I love being around music. Yeah, so that's what Anti-Famouz is about. I started making music, teenager. I was in a couple different bands, mostly like alternative rock bands growing up, and then moved out to Colorado. Couldn't get into band, so I started writing raps because that's all. I still wanted to make music, and turns out I was pretty good at it.
So when you first started out, was there any one particular instrument that you gravitated to, or did you just kind of think vocals were it more than playing an instrument?
So I always wanted to play the drums. I'm kind of an amateur drummer as of now, but when I was growing up, it was guitar. Yeah. I got an electric guitar and I had a bass guitar. I had a couple of electric guitars and a bass guitar. And in the bands, though, since I always considered myself a writer, I would write most of the lyrics to the songs, and so I was usually the vocalist, the lead singer, just playing like bass in the background. So like I'd mess around on the guitar, but it was mostly just singing.
When you started, did you lay down individual tracks with different instruments to help fill out the sound of the songs that you were creating, or did you work with a band that had individuals playing separate instruments?
When I was in the bands,
yes,
we each played our own separate instruments, and we would record as a full band. So I guess not individual instruments.
Yeah.
However, when I started writing raps is when I couldn't, I didn't have a band, I didn't know anybody. So that's when it was just like, well, this beat is easy.
Yeah.
But with that said, I try to find beats that have real live acoustic music. I prefer, in my beats specifically, mostly I should say, I prefer classical instruments. So like, or orchestral instruments, so like violins, pianos, cello, like that's to give it that bass, as opposed to, a bass guitar. Nothing against it, it's just to fit the song.
Right. It's a matter of preference and creativity. This is what you want to bring to your music when you create it.
Right. Yeah. And whenever I'm making a song, the way I see it is I'm not just writing a song, I'm building a song, and that's, kind of how each song is built is different, based on, the emotions that you're getting from it as the writer and the emotion that you're trying to portray to your audience.
And do you feel having the knowledge and skill and ability to play guitar, does that lend itself to your creative process when you're making music?
Not so much with me anymore. Now I'm more into getting more live music, or more live instruments. I actually just did a song recently. It's going to be released on December 3rd, where the other featured artist, every single instrument in that song, he had played or he had recorded himself. Like he had done both the guitars, the drums. It's really impressive work.
That's fantastic. And speaking of recent events, you and I got in contact through Christina from Sunshine Studios, and
Yes.
I know you had the Halloween Hoopla at
Yes.
Sunshine Studios. How did that go?
The Halloween Hoopla was so much fun. The lineup was just perfect. Like everybody who was there for the music, and it was the vibe was just irreplaceable. Yeah, it was such a great time.
When you put something together like that, do you take musicians from the same genre, or are you taking musicians who play different types of music to build that event?
So again, it kind of depends on the event, but each musician or each artist. So I like to say performer because I also work with visual artists and painters and stuff. But with each performer that comes to me and they're like, "Hey, I want to get on one of your shows," first thing I ask them is, "I need a link. I need to be able to hear your music." And it's not because I'm going to turn them down necessarily. It's just because I need to know what kind of music, what kind of vibe you're going to give off, and then I can place them in the lineup accordingly so that it would fit the best, make the best show.
I think I know exactly what you're talking about. So this is a geeky radio reference, and you'll bear with me.
Okay.
In radio, one of the things that I used to do when I first started out, so in college radio, is we would pull our music, that is at the time, and this is certainly going to age me, but there were records. I know that people definitely listen to records now, but when I first started out in radio, we would play records and we would pull them out at the beginning of our show and we would build our show. But what we would do is we would keep the music in mind from each song as we put our playlist together. So how does it lead into the next song? Is there a way that you can kind of crossfade it to make it sound almost seamless? And so
Right.
I know that's old school from from back in the 80s, but it sounds like when you're putting events together, you kind of keep that idea in mind. What's going to flow? What's going to sound good?
Exactly. I mean, if you think about it, it's a live playlist, you
Yes.
know, and again, the reason that I call them performers is because when they're up there on stage, it's not just, you know, you're listening to music, like they're giving you a performance, they're giving you a show. At the Halloween Hoopla was really cool. There was a lot of, you know, everyone was in costume, or a lot of people were in costumes.
Fun.
And like they had this one performer, he had several people line up on stage, and he was like the Scream character, and he had pretended to kill them on stage, and you know, everybody was a part of it, and the audience was just like, what is going on? You know, but it was the show, you know.
Absolutely. And so again, this is going to age me, but kind of the way Alice Cooper started out when he was first doing things, there was a show, there was a performance, there were theatrics in there to kind of be part of the show and part of his music.
Yeah, Alex Cooper is an excellent example, you know, and it's how certain bands are able to do that. You can see that, you know, their level of success, not just, you know, in record sales, but the fan base, you know, those people, like their fans are dedicated fans.
Exactly. And I think you bring up a good point. I mean, there's an 80s band that is still performing, but they're musical theater called Gwar, and they change musicians all the time, but their concept remains the same. It's a theatrical performance with music, and they're all in costume. And I think, like Alice Cooper, they do a pretty good job as well. But I also know there are some bands who have attempted it and just it misses the mark.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes, you know, and that's the tricky part is with the performance is you're kind of gauging your demographic, you know, before the show. So, you know, you're like, oh yeah, when you're, you know, rehearsing or going through rehearsals and, you know, this is how this is going to go. And then this performer is going to do that. And then, you know, you're like, this is going to be awesome, you know, and then the people that show up are like, they're not exactly the demographic you thought were going to be there. And you're like, this might not go over as well as we thought it would.
Yeah.
You know, but at that point, the show must go on. You know?
Exactly.
So.
Right. And who knows, maybe they see something that catches their attention and makes them say, yeah, actually, I really like this. Wasn't sure going into it that I would, but hopefully it turns them around.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And some performers, you know, they try to do too much to the show and then, you know, end up, you know, making a mistake, or it's just, you know, it's noticeable when you're just trying to do too much, you know. And my big thing, when a good friend of mine from another local group out here called Vet Life, his name is Tivo, he had told me when you get on stage, I get stage fright. Even today, I still get stage fright. And before I get on stage, he told me, you know, just keep in mind, you're up there to have fun. At the end of the day, like that's the whole reason you do this is to have fun. So when you're getting up on stage and, you know, you're performing, like, got to give them a show, but you got to make sure, you know, you're still up there to have fun, you know.
You know, and that brings up a really good point for people who have had the opportunity to be in the limelight. You know that there's this moment of, I don't know, there's something that happens, I think, before you step in front of a live audience. And I've always jokingly said to people, but it is in fact true, I'm very comfortable behind a microphone in a radio station, but put me in front of a group of people on a stage and all of a sudden I'm uncomfortable. There's an aspect of it that's kind of unnerving. So to be able to get on there and do your show and put that part of you aside, my hat's off to you for doing that, because I think that's a skill set that not everybody has.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Let's return to rap for a moment, because before we started the show, you and I were talking about the progression of rap. One of the jocks who works here is a guy that goes by the name of Big Len. And Big Len put together a playlist when he came in for my interview. And one of the bands he put on the playlist was Blondie, the song Rapture. Now, again, this is an 80s song, but most people believe that it's one of the first pop songs that included rap in it. So I wanted to talk with you because I feel like with rap, there has been a progression. It was present in the 80s, and some of the music we play on here, you'll definitely hear that sound, but it's moved in a different direction, not in a bad direction, but it's like it caught fire and then it expanded and it's become something that's very different than what the early sounding rap was. Would you speak to that?
Well, so I think there's an important distinction slash gray line, gray area between rap and hip hop.
Thank you for that.
Because they definitely go hand in hand, but they are a different kind of aspect of things. A lot of rap is become hip hop, but not all hip hop is rap.
Got it.
I guess.
Okay.
If
that makes perfect sense.
Okay.
It does.
So and yeah, there's definitely elements of hip hop that were on the rise. I think what really elevated rap specifically to not just into hip hop, but to at a larger level was how it was the voice of minorities, really. Yes. And it was a lot of people, that felt the same way, that were able to get behind that, and it was because, the way I see it was a lot of these, upstart, the first rappers like, Rakim, for example, a lot of them were giving voices to the people that had no voice. Right. And then, Tupac comes along and Mos Def, Black Star, like it's just, and they're speaking, to the people, and it wasn't just, but don't get me wrong, then, there's Ice Cube and, gangster rap. And so there's, different elements different subcategories started forming then, whereas like these artists, these songs are preaching to the people. These songs are, really kind of just preaching to my ego, or I'm just having fun, or these songs it's supposed to be a dark song because nobody really sees what this kind of, life is like. So it's these different kind of progressions. And then because it became so popularized, then, I feel like a lot of different, it needed to become more poppy in order to be marketed better. Yeah. Right. So that's when it started, let's make this a little bit lighter and, let's make this a club song. And, it started directing, and then that created another category. And now today you see hip hop in country songs, you see hip hop in rock, you see there was this 21 Pilots, for example. Yes. Like there are some songs in there, like if they wanted to be, they could be a very talented rapper, right? But that's not their genre, like, so it's, the elements are definitely there in a lot of music. And I feel like it's because a lot of that is because, it's the voice, and using that power.
Let's take a break real quickly. We're going to play some music and we will be back. I'm with Anti-Famouz. You're listening to Gnarly Metal After Hours on gnarly101.com. I am in the studio today with Anti-Famouz, who has taken some time out of his very busy schedule to come by and join us on Gnarly Metal After Hours. Gnarly Metal After Hours, a rock and talk show featuring conversations with radio announcers, musicians, and fans as we talk about radio, rock, and record. Before we went into the break, we were having a conversation about music in general, but we've kind of veered away from that. So I want to circle back around and talk a little bit more about your work as a musician, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the events you have coming up, because it seems as though you are an event planner and a musician.
Yes. Yeah. So my music is more, I like to think of it as more of alternative rap, because I don't rap about like gangster rap and, about money and women and all that stuff. I like to rap more about socio-political problems. As we had talked about before, I prefer to have real instruments in my beats. Yeah. I work with this guy that I've been working with for a long time. That's why I work with him, is because he uses real instruments and he's so versatile with them. And really, I've been influenced by a lot more alternative rock. Blink-182, Sublime, Rise Against, DMX. With my music, that's kind of what that's what I'm going for. That said, with Anti-Famouz Entertainment, which is the event planning, so I try to provide events not just for myself, but for all kinds of different performers, for visual artists, painters, illustrators, graphic artists, photographers, videographers, trying to give them all not just a platform, but also basically give them work, give them a contract, and get these guys more exposure, by actually doing the work that they like to do.
And I'm sure they're very grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I've been getting pretty good feedback.
Excellent.
I try to use these different contractors, I guess we can call them, as a stepping stone for the other different artists that come to me, as so I can help them with branding, help them, if they need photos for their socials, or they need, some merchandise or anything like that, then, they can come to Anti-Famouz Entertainment and we'll get them squared away, whether it's an event that they want to perform at, or they just need some branding, or, whatever the case may be. I'm here for the local art scene.
And from the event planning aspect of it, let's talk a little bit. You have 2 events coming up that you're working on simultaneously. You said the first event is a toy drive to benefit D11 schools. Will you speak a little bit about that one?
So that toy drive was kind of dropped on my lap, and I couldn't turn it down. The promoter who usually does it, shout out to Black Pegasus, he's been doing it every year for about 10 years, and unfortunately this year he just wasn't able to do it. So I asked him if I could take it over, and he gave me his blessing. So yeah, I'm trying to put together that toy drive, and we're going to donate the toys that we do receive to District 11 schools.
The second thing you talked about, and this one I think sounds very interesting as well, is an art show. You have an upcoming art show at No Logo Art Gallery. Tell me about the collaboration with No Logo Art Gallery.
So that's actually not the gallery. The name of the art show is the No Logo Art Gallery.
Got it.
And it's going to be an exhibition for several different local artists, and basically it's going to be kind of like an art party. You guys come out, hang out, have some glasses of wine, drink a beer, check out the work of these artists. If you want to buy them, you can buy one, but that work will be on display for up to 30 to 60 days at the gallery that we're going to be hosting it at, which I don't want to say just yet.
Got it. Until you finalize details.
Yep, until we lock in all the details.
Perfect. That's great. What I'd like to invite you to do is real quickly give your website address so people can go there and get information on these 2 upcoming events.
Certainly. So yeah, more information will be available on the website. It's www.antifamouz.com. That's ANTIFAMOUZ.com.
Tell me something. How do you write your original songs, lyrics, music? Is there a specific practice you have or ritual that you have when you go into writing, or does it just kind of, randomly you get a thought or an idea that drops into your head?
It kind of depends. Sometimes if I'm driving down the road and I'm like, oh, I should write a song about this, then I'm looking for, basically at that point, I just want to I need the beat almost immediately so that I can start working on the progress. So when I look for a beat, I look for a beat that kind of ties into whatever that idea would be. And then I can, now that beat also syncs with that, then I can start writing. What I do to start writing is write keywords on what I want the song to be about, and I kind of write them at the top of the page. I still use pen and paper when I write. My notebooks are very worn out, but yeah, I write the couple ideas at the top of the page, mostly keywords, and then as I'm writing the song, I'll kind of cross them off and keep going on the song. That helps me kind of stay on track also, so that I don't get lost in my own song.
Exactly, and I would imagine that's easy to do.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, especially when your brain is filled with great ideas and having to take the time to separate one from the other and say, this works best here in this element, this works best here in this element.
Right, exactly. And again, going back to the whole building the song, that's how, when the idea comes first, that's how I build the song. Otherwise, like sometimes when I'll just be listening to music. I listen to a lot of beats, classical music as well. So like a lot of stuff that doesn't have lyrics, just so I can kind of think and get in my head. And sometimes when I'll hear a certain beat or a classical song or something like that, where it's clearly I'm not going to use that beat, but it gives me that idea, right. Then I will go out and find or create a beat that is similar to that and give me that same emotional pull. And then I write based on that, on the emotional pull. But generally speaking, it's always the music first to give me that emotion, and then I start writing the ideas.
Friends of mine from the band Mad Rigel are teachers at the School of Rock. I'd like to ask musicians how they got their start in music. And I find that a lot of people have their first exposure to music through school. Was that the case for you, or was your exposure maybe something that came in the home?
No, this definitely came in the home. Both my parents were very passionate about music. Their genres were completely different. They would enjoy certain songs and whatever, but generally speaking, my mom was definitely more of she's the one who introduced me to rap in the first place.
Oh, very nice.
But she was listening to Led Zeppelin and Stone Temple Pilots and things like that. My dad was more Three Doors Down and Creed and that kind of thing. Oh, and my mom would always make songs to help us remember stuff. So our phone number or address and our last name. So there was always a little jingle to everything. And then I was in band when I was in school. Not very proud of it. I played the baritone.
Excellent. Yeah.
So, but it did teach me how to read and write music, though. So that was cool. And but yeah, after that is when I wanted to join a band, and that was more because of I wanted to rebel. I wanted to be a punk rocker. And
isn't it great though to have that space to do that? Because I feel like we really get in touch with ourselves and get a better understanding of ourselves when we have the opportunity to rebel, or even if it's not rebel, if it's to find solace in the fact that somebody else is singing about an experience that you might be having in your life, and you can put that anger out there, or you can go and flip it on the other side. It's that emotion that's like, oh my God.
No, I totally agree. I feel like the person that I am today, I wouldn't be the person that I am today if I didn't make any of the mistakes that I made when I was younger.
Right.
And when I was rebelling and, I thought this, that, and the third, and I needed to be checked, more than once. But what I ended up doing was I got myself into some really sticky situations with a lot of people, a lot of really, shady people. And when I got out of that situation and I was able to look back and see, that it was a really bad situation that I should not have been in the first place, I realized that a lot of people are still in that place and they can't get out. I was lucky, they didn't get lucky like me. And that's a big inspiration for me, a motivation, I should say, for why it's so important for me to continue writing this music, and not just making my music, but that's a big reason why I started Anti-Famouz Entertainment. And then when I wanted to expand the Robin Hood Initiative.
Fantastic. Yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about that in just a minute. We're going to take a short break. You're listening to Gnarly Metal After Hours on gnarly101.com. We'll be right back. Gnarly Metal After Hours. My friend Rich, Anti-Famouz, is in studios with me this afternoon. So thank you, Rich, for stopping by. Before we went into this break, we were talking a little bit about the event planning side and the music side of your business. Your business name is Anti-Famouz. How did you come up with that name? Is there a story behind it, or is it just something you thought sounded good?
So Anti-Famouz is, it's pretty self-explanatory. I like to think it's pretty self-explanatory, but yeah, it's basically, it's not about the fame. It's about the love of what we do. It's about the love of art. I would say the Latin phrase, but I don't want to mess it up on air. But yeah, that's what it's about. It's about doing what we love, and I truly feel like art and music can influence a lot of people. I think that the world needs a lot more of it, and so yeah, that's what it's about. It's not about being famous. If I can pay my bills, I'm happy.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's where Anti-Famouz comes from, is because it's not about the fame. And those are the artists that I'm looking for, is the ones that are passionate about it, that have that fire.
Right. And I think that puts us kind of on the same page, because longtime listeners of gnarly101.com know that our goal here is to bring people back to the 80s, but it's also to give us an opportunity to escape the chaos and kind of the stuff in day-to-day life that can be really stressful and unpleasant. And I believe that music definitely has a healing power, and there's something to be said for that, whether you're creating or listening or both. There's just a benefit in it being a part of our society all the way around.
100% agree. And just throwing this out there, I actually wrote a song a while back called My Win, and I wrote it because it was literally just to inspire myself, but it turned out to be such a great song, and the music video goes live on Monday. So if you check out my YouTube, Anti-Famouz with a Z, and you need to win for yourself, check out the song.
Perfect. Perfect.
That's what it's for.
So talk to me, how do you do that? You create the music, and do you do the video yourself, or do you have somebody you work with who helps create that? Are you being recorded in a live setting? What goes into putting the video together?
So with that one, I actually did my win almost entirely by myself. Well, and what goes into it is I wrote the script for it first, is so I know like how I want the video to actually go. Once I did that, then I can determine my A roll and B roll, which is basically you singing your full song basically in one take, and then in one setting, and then full song in another setting, so A roll, B roll, and then your background shots and any kind of accent shots, things like that, and all of those you kind of add in later on. Then once you mix it together, which you just kind of mixed according to your script, once you cut all that together, then you add in your transitions, and if you want to do lyrics, add those, but that's pretty much it. That said, that video, like I said, I did it myself. The one before that, it's Only One, which is a feature with 3 other local artists, and it's just about we're not the only one. So again, if you're feeling a little alone, check out Only One as well.
Yes.
But that one was professionally done by Chasing Mice Media, and they do excellent work. I could not do that video.
Yeah, there really is a talent to it. There really is a skill set to it.
Definitely. And again, it's, going for different vibes when you're building a song. So like with my win, I thought that video would kind of, it's appropriate for that song. With Only One though, it needed to have that influence. It needed to reach people. And that's why I needed to have somebody who knew exactly what they were doing when they did that video.
And while we're on the subject, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about how people can support you. You have your website, which you said is antifamouz.com. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
With a Z.
With a Z. And then social media, you said YouTube?
Yes, YouTube. It's just Anti-Famouz, or at just Anti-Famouz. On Facebook, it's Anti-Famouz Recordings, and Instagram, Anti-Famouz. TikTok is the real Anti-Famouz. But generally speaking, if you search Anti-Famouz with a Z at the end, then and you see a Guy Fawkes mask, that's me.
That's you. Yeah.
The music is on Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, on top of YouTube, and it's on literally every streaming service, Deezer, Tidal, iHeartRadio. Like it's on wherever you listen to music, you can find Anti-Famouz.
Yeah, that's got to be so gratifying.
It is. It's heartwarming.
Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk a bit about the Robin Hood Initiative. And before we get into discussing what it is, I'm going to ask you the same question as I did previously. How did you come up with the name for the Robin Hood Initiative?
So that's kind of funny. I recycled it from an organization I started as a teen. I started the Robin Hood organization when I was a teenager, and then it was more politically based, which, teenagers not really into politics, turns out. It was just me. I wasn't a very cool kid.
But you're cool now.
I'm cool now.
That's right.
But yeah, so I kind of scrapped that, and then when Anti-Famouz Entertainment was kind of taken off with these events, I realized that there's very little programs available to especially hip-hop artists and hip-hop performers, but there's very little programs available for local musicians to actually get in there and start getting paid unless they already have a connection. And that's where I thought, well, it's similar to the Robin Hood organization, and I just switched that O for an I, and Robin Hood Initiative was born.
Excellent. And if people want to find out about the Robin Hood Initiative, they can go to antifamouz.com, or does the Robin Hood Initiative have its own website?
So the Robin Hood Initiative does not have its own website just yet. It's actually brand new. I finalized my IRS paperwork about 2 months ago.
Nice.
So it is brand new. It's a 501(c) nonprofit, and I don't have a website yet. So as of right now, just email me or go onto the website and contact me through the website. Email is antifamouz with a Z at yahoo.com. But yeah, basically just reach out to me for more information there. But it's a nonprofit where I can pool sponsors and advertising and use that to help artists, whether it's for an event or for branding, or if they need a grant for something, or they need equipment, or whatever the case may be, then we can try to help out local artists in some way, shape, or form.
Do people who come to you seeking the assistance, in terms of the musicians or the artists, do they have to have a certain certain level of experience or expertise, or do you work with people on a sliding scale in terms of their skill set?
I'll work with anybody. However, if, for instance, if you were to come over to me and you say, hey, look, I want to have branding, I want to get my own logo, I want to get business cards, I want a website, I want 100 t-shirts, and I'm like, all right, well, what kind of content do you have, X, Y, and Z, and you've only put out 3 songs, I'm going to tell you that you shouldn't do that.
Okay.
Now, if you're adamant, I mean, I'll still do it, okay? But I'm going to tell you that that's a bad idea. I'm going to tell you, you should probably start with building some socials and da-da-da-da-da. Try to, let's work on some more of your content first. I got a guy at a recording studio you can work with, and kind of go from there. So I have this one client, for example, he's 18 years old, and he's just kind of getting into music, and he has no idea where to start. And he was kind of doing the same thing, not like getting 100 t-shirts, but he's like, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I'm like, well, let's kind of slow down a little bit. Let's build your portfolio a little bit. Let's make sure that you can register yourself, make sure you're going to be able to get your royalties right off the gate. So that way you don't have to worry about that 2 years down the road and like, oh, I'm YouTube is making all its money off of those
Right.
3 songs I already put out.
And copyright too, I imagine, would be a factor.
Yeah, copywriting, so making sure that you have all of your legality stuff taken care of, and then moving on to that. So that's what I squared away with him. His next step is getting into the studio. Now he's got about 10 songs, so we're just trying to get him in there and work from there. That said, I have other performers that are much more established, and for instance, Van Demand, shout out. Mm-hmm. He's an artist out in Pueblo. Like I said, he's much more established. We're working together to put out an event where he can headline his own event down in Pueblo, with local sponsors, local businesses, local community, because I'm all about the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as of right now, just to clarify, that's where a lot of the RHI's funding goes to as of now. The toy drive, a lot of that's going to go to the toy drive, but any sponsorship goes to RHI, then goes to these events to minimize the blow and make it more cost effective.
You mentioned studios, getting into the studio. When I looked at your website, did I see that you have studio space available for people to, I assume, come in and use to help create things?
So my workspace is more of an office.
Okay.
But I do work. So, for instance, if somebody needs to get into a studio, I have three or four different studios that are on my website, because I'm not trying to be a gatekeeper. 3 or 4 studios that I can refer you to, and I refer you to those people because I work with those studios in one way or another. Same thing when it comes to photographers and videographers, and that's where the whole branding and giving these artists and performers, different opportunities that's more cost effective. That's where a lot of that comes in. For example, with a photographer, one of the photographers I use, he charges his base rate is $250 an hour. Now, a lot of performers aren't going to be able to throw away $250, right? But if I can get 4 performers to put down $75, well, now we can make this happen. Each of them get 15 minutes. They can do their merchandise, get a handful, 30 to 50 shots professionally done and edited, and they can use them on their socials, and they only had to pay $75 instead of $250, right? So same kind of concept with the studios is, you can hire me to basically handle all of that for you, and then I'll just tell you, like, hey, you got to be at Mount Olympus at this time, But really, I mean, it's all of this information, all of these guys are available on my website. Contact me directly, and I'll set you up with them.
That's a great resource, because I have this opinion, and it's just my personal opinion, but I think there's 2 types of people in the world. When it comes to being a creative person, and this is not to be disrespectful, sometimes creative people do not have the same level of skill on the business side of things. And conversely, sometimes business people are really good at what they do, but they don't have the creative vision or the creative ability. So to have someone like you step in and be able to give some guidance for people who are very creative, but need to know what the next steps would be in order to put things straight business-wise, it just seems like it would be a very good resource for people who maybe don't have both the creative and the business skill set.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. My friend Anti-Famouz, Rich, is in the studio with me today for Gnarly Metal After Hours. We're going to get close to wrapping things up here. Before we do, I'm going to take you to a moment of asking you some not so serious questions. 2 of them. The first one is, the first one, and this is just for fun. Is it okay to wear a t-shirt from a different band to a concert?
Ooh.
I know. I have people who have very differing opinions on this. And so there's no right or wrong answer here.
Right. I mean, it depends. So if you don't have the shirt of the band that you're trying to go see, but you have a shirt of a similar genre, sure,
Yeah.
but I don't go to a Seether concert wearing a Savage Garden shirt, like that.
Right.
There's certain rules.
Okay. And next question. This is a little more personal. Do you sing in the shower?
Usually.
Yep.
I have great acoustics in my bathroom.
There you go. There's something to be said for that. I sing in the car too.
Yeah.
I'm sure, people who are parked next to me whenever I'm at a red light are like, what is this lady doing?
Now I have to sing in the car. My radio just broke.
There you go. All right. We're just about to wrap things up here. But Rich, I want to thank you again for your time today. And I want you to give your social media information, your website information, and let people know how they can find you and support you and the work that you do.
Excellent. Well, and again, thank you so much for having me. Websites, antifamouz.com. That's antifamouz with a Z.com. And socials is just Anti-Famouz on YouTube, Anti-Famouz Recordings on Facebook, Anti-Famouz on Instagram, and The Real Anti-Famouz on TikTok.
Excellent. Well, I thank you, my friend, for stopping by and joining us today for Gnarly Metal After Hours.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. You've been listening to Gnarly Metal After Hours, a live monthly rock and talk show that features conversations with radio announcers, musicians, and fans about radio, rock, and records. A replay of this show will be posted on the YouTube channel, Gnarly Metal After Hours. It takes me about a week to 2 weeks. You can also catch a replay of this on Gnarly Metal, my Facebook page. I'm Kelly Thomas, and until next time, have a great weekend. Peace, and keep it right
rock
here.
on.
And rock on, exactly, on gnarly101.com.